What would it look like for you to embrace your becoming? Well, today that's what I'm going to discuss with you. But before I do, my name is Nasira Waters, and as many of you know, the channel's name is Connecting to Consciousness. Now, in the new year, that is going to change because I'm going to add varied content outside of this content, which is about personal and spiritual self growth and development. And so when I come back in the new year, which will be in a few weeks to a month actually, I will share the name that the channel will be, and I will discuss more of the additional content that I am going to upload to the channel. Now, when I think about embracing your becoming, I think about transforming our lives. I think about what and how I am showing up currently and what my life is calling me and how my life is calling me to show up as I move forward. And so, as we move forward into the new year, I just wanted to share a few things about embracing your becoming. And the first thing I want to focus on, and this will probably be the majority of this video, is embracing your becoming requires releasing our ego. Now, for me, I know when I first started to recognize that I needed to release my ego, it wasn't an easy process. Embracing your becoming is a process of understanding where you are and where you long to be. Now, what I've come to know is that we are all becoming something, whether we're becoming more of who we are, which may not necessarily be the best in our best interests, or we're becoming something more deeply. Regardless, we are always becoming something. And so, in my mind, when I consider that, I think, why not embrace my becoming with intention? And so, being intentional about that process is being intentional about being observant, observing how I show up in the world, observing my thinking. And doing that allows me to recognize when pride is raising up is rising up within me. And so releasing the ego is a crucial step in moving forward in the process of embracing your becoming. Because the ego tells us that we cannot look weak, we cannot look like we don't know certain things. We always have to look strong. We have to present in such a way that makes us appear to be something that maybe at that particular time we are not. And that's okay. And so in this process of considering embracing your becoming, it requires, again, being observant, understanding, and being able to see when the ego is rising up and taking the time to have some strategies in place that will support the process of putting something in place of ego. Now, for me, when I go on this journey and when I am conscious of my ego rising up, I know that I have to have access to some tools that will support me. And for me, that access has to be something that I have embedded in my life. And that's a spiritual practice. The spiritual practice for me is reading my Bible daily. Now, there are times that I may miss it, but having a practice of daily reading and studying and meditating on it throughout the day, that is my anchor as I've come to accept that it is my source of faith and my rule of conduct. And so going back to the word and it coming to me when ego is rising has been essential for me in order for me to have something else in place of the reaction of my ego. So, okay, so if something is happening in my life, the word of God will come up for me and it will help me to focus on that versus maybe what's happening or what the situation is. And it can prompt me, and often does, especially now, prompt me to pray about the situation versus allowing it to take over my emotions and causing me to give in to reacting. Notice I said me giving in to reacting because I am the only one in control of my emotions and my behavior. And so having resources means that there's a toolbox that can support this process. And that toolbox is a spiritual practice that I invite you to engage in. Again, for me, it's starting with the Bible. It's also praise and worship, songs, and taking the time to engage in other literature that helps me to consider my spiritual development. It's also surrounding myself around people who are growing and who wish me well. There are a number of things that support my process of embracing my becoming. And so I invite you to start to consider what are some practices that you can put in place so that when your ego rises up, and it will, as long as you're human, it will, what are some practices that you can utilize when your ego starts to rise up? It may be different for each person, but it's something that I invite you to consider because as you embrace your becoming, you want to do it with intention. We are always becoming something, as I stated previously. Either we're becoming more of who we are, or we're becoming something even greater than where we are and who we are at the time. And for me, it's about being intentional since it's going to happen either way. And starting, again, I'm repeating, starting with intention is being observant of how you show up, and not only how you show up in behavior, but in your thinking, and having a practice so that you have tools. And I say having a spiritual practice that provides tools for you to turn to so that after a while, those tools will become second nature to you because we perform what we practice. Again, we perform what we practice. So I invite you on this journey of embracing your becoming to start to observe when your ego shows up. It's not about being right when circumstances are challenging. It's about growth and spiritual development and relationship. So, what do you see, or how do you see your embracing your becoming? How do you see it? Whatever that vision you have, write it down. Write down the vision that you have for yourself and your spiritual journey. Write down some things that you are seeing in yourself now and some things that you want to see in yourself. And underneath each thing that you want to see, And I would say start with at least three. Start with three things, and for each of them, pinpoint 2 to 3 actions that you will take to become those things and to show up in those ways. Lastly, I reiterate, and I cannot emphasize enough, it's important, it is crucial to have a spiritual practice so that those spiritual practices can anchor you and help you to become the person that you long to be, the person actually that God longs for us to be, and so that you have tools to access when the ego rises up. Now, this is going to be my last video for this year. So I just want to say I wish you well on this journey of embracing your becoming. Of course, I'm going to present more content in terms of our spiritual growth and the development and personal development, which for me, they go hand in hand. And it's a journey. Life is going to happen, but having those spiritual practices as tools will support your process in being conscious about how you respond and the actions you choose to take. So, continue on the journey to embrace your becoming. Be clear about where you are. Be clear about where you long to be. Get clear about how you're going to get there and the practices that you're going to implement. And begin now. Until next time, live consciously.